In each new Minecraft update, the Mojang development team goes through an extensive idea process, thus generating a lot of concept art in order to better visualize how these ideas will look like in the game. But although many of these ideas have been incredible, the vast majority don't end up being implemented in the game due to technical problems, either because it's too difficult to program for all devices, it doesn't match the essence of Minecraft, or they simply change their mind. But today, you will see one of the most abysmal changes of the idea that Mojang has ended up making. It turns out that in the last official videos that Minecraft has uploaded to their YouTube account, they revealed unpublished secrets, which show the original idea they had for the biome of the dark depths. You will be surprised how different they were going to do. They were so different that they wanted to add luminescent Medusa jellyfish. For this reason, we almost had Medusa jellyfish in Minecraft. Welcome back to Bobicraft. We will begin by answering an interesting question. What inspired the developers to create the ancient cities? Well, it is quite curious that everything is made of stone, and that most of them are destroyed or deteriorated. This is because they are inspired by ancient Roman construction, and now everything makes sense. The walls, pillars, the arches, they look a lot like ancient cities, but things don't end here. Mojang also said that ancient cities are also inspired by Mayan temples. Not for nothing, Mayan temples usually have giant heads. These are very similar to those that can be found in the ancient cities, even in the engraved block. But now that you know that they are inspired by the Mayans and the Romans, we will answer the next question that Mojang has revealed in his video. How different would the ancient cities be? Well, these were going to be very different. First of all, as you will remember, the old cities are full of skull blocks. However, in the original idea of Mojang, we can see how skull blocks are not infested in absolutely everywhere. They are only in some areas, like this one here. This is because waking up the warden was going to be much easier, as it turns out that when the skull blocks were stepped on, they were going to generate a lot of sound. Obviously, the sounds could attract the warden, but to balance this mechanic, ancient cities weren't going to have as many skull blocks, so obviously the player could pass more easily in some areas. Knowing all this, I want you to look at this idea that Mojang had. The chests were going to be surrounded by skull blocks, but when you step on them, the loud sounds would be generated activating the warden, so the player would have to investigate how to access those chests. And one of the ideas that Mojang had to be able to access this type of chest was to use a bell. As we can see in this concept art, there is a huge bell in the center of the ancient cities. This giant bell in the ancient cities would serve so that player could shoot arrows and then thus activating the bell. The bell will emit a big noise, causing the warden to approach the bell, thus being able to distract this beast. And once the warden is distracted, the player could sneak behind it, reaching the chest without getting the warden close. But speaking of chests, did you know that Mojang planned not to add a typical chest in the ancient cities? Well, the original idea was to add a stone chest, but how were they going to be? This idea was that instead of typical chests, there would be a kind of vessels. These vessels would have different shapes. Even an internet user called Toughener made a recreation of how these vessels would have looked in ancient cities. The idea was that the player had to break these vessels, and once he broke it, all items would come from inside. The problem is that when breaking the vessels, a sound of vessels breaking would be emitted. But clearly, when breaking a vessel, the warden would be alerted. So you would have to be very careful when breaking a vessel. The other way to get items would be with a deep slate chest. The idea is that these chests are closed. This means that you couldn't open it with right click. The player would have to break the lid first, and once it was broken, he could open the inside. The problem is that when you break the lid of this block, once again, the warden could hear it. Sadly, the developers didn't say why they didn't add in the end, but my theory is that they will expect to add the vessels when archaeology arrives. But now that you know more about what ancient cities were going to be, let's go to the main topic of this video. What were the Medusa jellyfish like in the dark depth? First thing to mention is that the biome where the ancient cities can be generated is called Deep Dark. However, originally it was going to be called the Beyond Bright, but sometime later it was changed to Deep Dark. The name Beyond Bright was because the dark depths were going to be very bright. Instead of looking like this, it would have looked something like this. According to developers, these biomes will look like an aquatic biome, but without the water, like an underwater cave, but that has dried up over the time. Right now, you are looking at a real photo that Mojang has shared. As you can see, everything has luminescence. And here we have another one, where you can see some dry grasses and also some orange mushrooms that illuminate, as well as luminescent mushrooms on the walls. But if this biome was going to be inspired inspired by the dry oceanic biome, they should have implemented a mob that is consistent with this biome. And this is where the idea of fighting the Medusa jellyfish in the game comes in. These Medusas would look like quite similar to glowing squids. Their texture would be able to glow in the dark. And not only that, we would see the Medusas float through all the caves. According to developers, they would look like a little ghost. Here comes something interesting. If you have ever seen animated series, the Medusas can make you a lot of damage. Most of them produce a potion to be able to defend themselves from the predators. This means that if you are in a cave with this floating Medusa jellyfish and you manage to touch one, it will surely start to hurt you, being a mob that we would have to constantly dodge. You probably think that all these ideas of this depth dark much brighter and more luminescent is something super cool, but then why didn't they add all this at the end? Why did they decide to change their mind? Well, all this is due to the Warden. The most important thing about the Warden is that he was blind. The whole mechanic of crouching and not making noise is because the Warden has no eyes, so if they had added a biome that is extremely bright, it wouldn't make sense that the Warden was blind. Animals like the star-nosed mole always live underground, makes its eyes useless, and that is why it is blind. The animal has had to adapt other senses than sight, as for example hearing and smell, exactly the same as the Warden develops smell and hearing. That's why it doesn't make sense with such a bright world. But also the main reason is that the developers wanted to make this biome much more spooky. This here is not scary, but this here is much more terrifying, all very dark. But tell me below in the comments, would you have liked to see the original idea? If you want to see more information about Minecraft, on the left you have the playlist of Minecraft for this reason, and on the right you have a video suggested by the YouTube algorithm. Remember that you can already order my book here below in the description.